PC gaming's in serious trouble. Something is happening in PC gaming that I think is genuinely one of the most important stories in the hobby right now, because it's not just about prices going up, it's about the entire premise of PC gaming, which has always been built on the idea that you can get it at whatever budget suits you and scale up from there. But the idea is currently being dismantled piece by piece, and the culprit is artificial intelligence. A growing concern within the hardware industry is that gaming PCs could become significantly more expensive over the next few years. The explosive demand for AI hardware has begun driving up the cost of core components such as DRAM, NAND flash, and high bandwidth memory, which are essential not only for data centers but also for consumer devices like gaming PCs. Industry analysts have already started warning that these price pressures are rippling across the wider technology market. As memory manufacturers prioritize lucrative AI contracts, supplies for traditional consumer hardware is tightening, and that inevitably pushes prices upward. Rising memory costs are already beginning to constrain the broader electronics market, with forecasts suggesting that higher prices will contribute to a reduction in global PC and smartphone shipments throughout 2026. This raises an uncomfortable question for gamers. If the cost of these core components continues to rise, the price of entry-level gaming systems could increase dramatically, potentially putting what used to be relatively affordable PC builds out of reach for many people. And that is what I want to unpack today. How did the market end up here? What does it actually mean for gaming hardware in 2026? And why are PC gamers finding themselves caught in the middle of a technology arms race that was never really meant for them in the first place? I am Lady Decade, and if you like your gaming industry analysis sharp and completely free of corporate spin, then hit that subscribe button, because today we are talking about the slow death of the affordable gaming PC and why artificial intelligence is the thing that is killing it. Before I get into the analysis, I want to remind you that even though PC gaming is getting brutally expensive, great games are still out there and you can still get them at genuinely reasonable prices. Right now you can use my links below to get some brilliant discounts, whether you are after the latest releases or something from the back catalogue that you've been meaning to play. Use my links below to get 31% off the critically acclaimed Resident Evil Requiem, a mental 91% off the amazing Streets of Rage 4, and even huge discounts on pre-orders such as 33% off a Fatal Frame 2 remake, which comes out this week, 28% off Monster Hunter Stories 3, which also comes out this week, and up to 90% off of thousands more games. Every single purchase through my links helps support this channel directly, and if you really love what I do here, you can gain access to my behind the scenes Patreon cosplay library and a whole lot more. For example, I've also started my outfit of the episode photos in my all new style gallery. Today, for example, I've accessorized this stylish pink wig for the first time. I love speaking gaming with you lot over there, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this video. To understand why PC gaming is in trouble, you need to understand something about how the global memory market works, because it is not actually something most people ever think about. DRAM, which stands for Dynamic Random Access Memory, is a type of chip that lives inside your system RAM, inside console memory, and inside the VRAM on your graphics card. NAND flash is the type of memory that lives inside your solid-state drive. These two components are, at this point, the fundamental building blocks of almost every computing device on the planet. And for the last several decades, the economics of how they get made and sold were relatively predictable. They were boom and bust cycles tied to supply and demand, but the general direction of travel over time was cheaper, more capable memory year on year. That is the reason a budget gaming PC in 2019 was actually quite a capable machine. It's the reason the idea of a starter build existed at all, but that assumption is now being torn apart, and the thing tearing it apart is, as I said, artificial intelligence. And when I say AI, I'm not talking about its use in the games themselves, not machine learning used to upscale textures or improve frame rates, but the absolutely colossal, almost incomprehensible demand that the AI industry has created for the very same memory chips that live inside your gaming PC. The data centers that run the models behind tools like ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and Meta's AI systems need extraordinary quantities of high bandwidth memory to function. And the companies building those data centers, the Microsofts, the Googles, the Amazons, and the Metas of the world, have essentially unlimited budgets compared to the consumer electronics market. This means they will pay whatever it costs, and they need to get as much of it as they can. The consequence, of course, is that it is a supply chain that is being profoundly restructured around their requirements rather than ours. TrendForce, one of the most widely cited market research firms in the semiconductor industry, released its analysis of memory pricing in January 2026, and the numbers are genuinely alarming. They reported that DRAM suppliers in Q1 2026 will continue to reallocate advanced process nodes and new capacity towards server and HBM products to support rising AI server demand, and that this shift had significantly limited supply in other markets. Their initial forecast was that conventional DRAM contract prices would rise by around 55 to 60% quarter on quarter. Then, in February, the Register reported that TrendForce had revised those numbers upwards, with DRAM now expected to surge by 90 to 95% quarter on quarter, and NAND flash expected to rise by 55 to 60%. Those are not rounding errors. That is, memory nearly doubled in price in a single quarter. And the person at the sharp end of all of that is the person who builds their own PC or who buys components to upgrade, because the gaming consumer is now the lowest priority customer in the entire memory supply chain. The big analysis from Gartner, the research and advisory firm that is widely considered one of the most authoritative voices in tech forecasting, makes the scale of the problem crystal clear. Gartner announced in February 2026 that rising memory costs are expected to reduce global device shipments to a degree not seen in over a decade. It is projected that worldwide PC shipments would fall 10.4% in 2026 compared to 2025, and that combined DRAM and SSD prices would surge by 130% by the end of the year, pushing average PC prices up by 17%. Ranjit Atwal, Senior Director Analyst at Gartner, stated, "This is the steepest contraction in device shipments witnessed in over a decade. Higher prices will narrow the range of devices available, prompting buyers to hold on to devices for longer, fundamentally altering upgrade cycles." Now, a 17% average price increase across all PCs sounds manageable if you say it quickly, but the crucial thing Gartner found was where those costs land hardest. It's not the top of the market that suffers the most. High-end premium machines have fat enough margins that manufacturers can absorb some of the cost increase. It is the bottom of the market that gets obliterated. Gartner specifically projected that money costs would rise to represent 23% of the total bill of materials on a PC by the end of 2026, up from 16% in 2025, making low-margin entry-level machines essentially unviable to produce. In fact, Gartner forecasts that the sub-$500 PC segment could disappear entirely by 2028. Of course, the PC gaming community has always understood that there is a floor, a point of entry where someone with a modest budget can get into the hobby without committing to a flagship machine. That floor has moved around over the years, but the understanding that it existed is absolutely fundamental to the culture of PC gaming. The whole ecosystem is built on it. The modding scene, the indie game market, the historical love of PC as the platform where you have the most flexibility and the most choice. All of that depends on the existence of budget hardware, and that budget hardware is now under existential threat from an industry that was not even a significant consumer of these components just a decade ago. Since graphic cards are the single most important component in a gaming PC, the consequences of this memory crisis are felt most sharply at the GPU level, where rising memory costs are becoming immediately visible in the price and availability of modern graphics cards. VRAM is the video memory that lives on your graphics card. It handles the game's textures, its geometry, its frame buffer, everything that the GPU needs to process in order to render what you see on screen. And VRAM is made from the same types of memory chips that AI data centers are fighting over, specifically GDDR7, the latest generation. Buy-sell Ram's analysis of the GPU market in early 2026 identified a critical structural shift that has been underway. VRAM has become the dominant cost component of modern GPUs, while global memory production is increasingly optimized for AI data center workloads rather than consumer graphics cards. It went on to note that memory components now account for more than 80% of a GPU's total manufacturing cost, compared to previous generations where the GPU die itself was the dominant cost. That is an extraordinary inversion of how the economics of graphics cards used to work. The downstream effects of that are already visible at retail. TechRadar reported at the start of January 2026 that European sellers were already flagging supply issues on the Nvidia RTX 5000 series GPUs, specifically the 5070 Ti, the 5080 and the flagship RTX 5090, directly attributing those shortages to the RAM crisis. At Best Buy in the United States at the time of reporting, the Asus Prime GeForce RTX 5080 was selling for $1,599 against the manufacturer's suggested retail price of $999. That is $600 over the official price. And it's not happening because of profiteering by any individual retailer, but because the supply chain simply cannot deliver enough units to meet demand at the listed price. And it gets worse when you look at where these prices are heading over the course of the year. Nvidia launched the RTX 5090, the absolute top of its current consumer range, at $1,999 at the start of 2026. That is already a price point that excludes a significant chunk of even the most enthusiastic PC gaming market, and it represents a generation-on-generation price increase that is substantially steeper than any we have seen before. But multiple industry sources have suggested that even this launch price may not hold. LinkedIn analysis from industry insiders in January 2026 pointed to the RTX 5090 potentially reaching $5,000 by the end of the year, reflecting the combined effects of memory shortages, sustained AI demand, and strategic pricing adjustments by manufacturers. If that projection materializes, Nvidia's flagship gaming GPU will cost more than an entry-level car payment in the UK. And if the flagship is heading towards $5,000, you don't need to do much maths to understand what it means for the mid-range options below it. But here is something that makes this even harder to stomach, because it is not just the GPU that is getting more expensive. Every single major component in a gaming PC is being hit by the same wave simultaneously. Tom's Hardware reported in November 2025 that rumours had emerged of Nvidia outright cancelling its planned RTX 5000 Super Series of graphics cards, the more affordable mid-cycle refresh that historically represents the best value for money entry point in a generation, due specifically to a shortage of 3GB GDDR7 chips that can't make it to the consumer market for desktop. The Super Series has been the sweet spot for budget-conscious gamers in every recent generation. If it simply does not exist this time around, that is an enormous gap in the market that nothing else currently fills. There is essentially no component that you can turn to that is going to hold its price, which means that building a mid-range gaming PC in the future, the mathematics of a budget build may simply stop working altogether. And now we need to talk about why PC gamers specifically are being disproportionately hammered by all of this compared to people who play on a console, because there is a common response to this story that essentially boils down to just buy a console then, and I want to engage with that properly. After all, the comparison is less straightforward than it first appears. Indeed, console hardware will also be affected by the memory shortage. As WebPro News reported in November of 2025, Microsoft had begun warning retail partners of impending Xbox price hikes as the RAM shortage tightened. The Economic Times noted in December of 2025 that demand for DRAM has exceeded supply as the tech sector races to build out artificial intelligence infrastructure, and that Sony, Microsoft and Nintendo were all facing potential cost increases. and leaker Moore's law is dead, did note one significant distinction worth highlighting. Sony apparently planned ahead on memory procurement for the PS5, which is why PlayStation has so far been shielded from the worst of the increases, whereas Microsoft did not plan quite so carefully, leading to a third round of Xbox price hikes this generation. But even with that caveat, the fundamental economic situation of console gaming versus PC gaming under these conditions is completely different, and it comes down to a simple structural reality. So let's break down what this means further. Console hardware is fixed. When Sony or Microsoft manufactures a console, they purchase the components at bulk contract pricing, often negotiated a year or more in advance, lock that configuration in for several years, and pass a heavily subsidized machine onto you at retail, usually at or below their actual cost, with the expectation of recouping the investment through software sales and subscriptions. Console manufacturers are also in the incredibly powerful position of being able to predict their exact memory requirements years in advance and lock in supply contracts accordingly. A PS5 will still be a PS5 2 years from now, with the same memory configuration that was negotiated before the AI boom truly took hold. PC components, by contrast, are bought on the open market in the present day at whatever the current going rate happens to be. You're not negotiating bulk contracts with Samsung or Micron, you're buying 1 or 2 units from a retailer who themselves are buying at a market rate that is being set by the AI industry. In other words, the console owner benefits from corporate bulk purchasing power and supply chain sophistication that the individual PC builder simply does not have access to. And then there is a second equally important structural difference. The console ecosystem is by its very nature closed and controlled. The PS6 will not launch with more VRAM than Sony can source affordably at the time of manufacturing. If memory costs are still this elevated when the next generation of consoles is being developed, Sony and Microsoft will design around those constraints from the outset. They will optimize their software around whatever memory configuration is economically viable, and the game developers making console titles will do the same. PC gamers do not have that luxury. The minimum specifications of games are set to some degree by what the majority of the installed base can run, and as older, cheaper GPUs fall out of the supported range, the floor keeps rising. If the cheapest currently available GPU is an RTX 5060 that costs $400 at launch and $600 by the time you can actually find one, that is the minimum bar you have to clear just to play new releases, and that is before you have even bought a CPU, a motherboard, RAM, storage, a case, or power supply. So you can quickly see how many issues are at play here. There is also a particularly brutal irony here that I don't think gets discussed enough, which is that Nvidia itself has played a direct and active role in engineering the conditions that are now making its own gaming hardware unaffordable to the audience it's built its reputation serving. Nvidia is, before it is anything else, a GPU company that made its name selling graphics cards to gamers. For decades, the GeForce line was the product that kept the lights on and built the brand, but something changed around 2022 and 23 when the demand for AI compute absolutely exploded, and Nvidia realized that the same chip architecture it had been using to render games could, with some modification, become the most sought-after commodity in the world for training and running artificial intelligence models. The H100, A100 and now H200 AI accelerated chips that Nvidia sells to data centers generate profit margins that dwarf anything the consumer gaming market can offer. An H100 retails for somewhere between $25,000 and $40,000 $1,000 depending on the configuration. An RTX 5090 retails for $1,999. You don't need to be a business analyst to understand which of those two product lines Nvidia is more interested in prioritizing. PC Gamer reported in December 2025 that Nvidia is reportedly looking to cut gaming GPU production by up to 40% in 2026 due to VRAM supply issues, confirming that the company is actively directing its memory supply away from the gaming consumer market. It's clear that Nvidia have made an active business decision that the AI market was more profitable than the gaming market, and it has restructured its production accordingly. The gaming community is essentially being told to wait in line behind hyperscalers and cloud service providers, pushing PC gamers to the very back of the queue. From a purely financial perspective, Nvidia's decision makes complete sense for its shareholders. The company is posting historic profits. Its stock performance has been extraordinary, but the consequences for the gaming audience that made Nvidia the brand it is are quite significant. The affordability of gaming GPUs was never guaranteed, but it also never faced this particular kind of structural threat before. In previous GPU price shocks, whether from the cryptocurrency boom of 2017 to 2018 or the pandemic-era chip shortage, the root cause was a temporary demand spike that eventually resolved. What is happening now is different. AI is not a bubble. The demand from data centers for high bandwidth memory and GPU compute is structural, long-term, and almost certainly going to intensify rather than diminish. This is a fundamental reorientation of whom the semiconductor industry's most important customer is. And that customer is not you. So, what does all of this mean in practice for the person who is sitting in front of a PC that they built maybe 2 or 3 years ago and is starting to wonder whether it is time to upgrade? The answer right now in March 2026 is wait if you possibly can, but understand that waiting may not get you better prices. Historically, the advice of PC gaming upgrades has always been to hold on until you see a clear generational leap in the GPU tier below what you want to buy, because the market would reliably offer you better value over time. That principle is now being inverted. There is no obvious bottom of the market that is coming to rescue the budget builder. The sub-$500 PC disappearing by 2028 is not just a problem for people who want to spend $500, it is a signal about the direction of the whole market. If the cheapest rung of the ladder disappears, all of the rungs above it also shift upwards. The culture of PC gaming has always been distinct from console gaming precisely because of its openness and its accessibility at multiple price points. The modding community exists because PCs are open platforms. The indie game renaissance happened in significant part because developers could build for PC and release through Steam without needing a publisher's permission or a console certification. The competitive esports scene is built almost entirely on PC hardware. The back catalogue culture, where you can buy a 10-year-old game for £2 and play it on a modern machine, exists because of the backwards compatibility that is baked into the PC ecosystem by default. All of that is downstream of the fact that you could, at almost any budget, get a machine capable of running software. If the floor of that accessibility shifts from a few £100s to £2,000, the kind of person who can participate in PC gaming culture changes fundamentally. The teenagers saving up their birthday money, the university student with a strict budget, or the working parent who wants a capable machine without spending a month's salary. All of those people get squeezed out. And then when they get squeezed out, they do not typically stop gaming. They go to where the accessible, fixed price, guaranteed to work hardware is. They go to the console. As we covered in a recent video on this channel, the competitive landscape in the living room is actively shifting. The Steam Machine is coming, Project Helix is coming, and if gaming PCs become genuinely unaffordable for a significant portion of the market, those products arrive in a landscape where they are not competing with the PC as a peer, but essentially picking up the audience that the PC has priced out. the RAM shortage is actually causing complications for the Steam Machine launch as well. But a self-contained console device, even one that faces cost pressures, operates at a categorically different price ceiling from an open, upgradable gaming PC. Will not be expected to replace a Steam Machine's GPU. Will not be expected to source our own VRAM on the open market. You'll be able to buy the box and it will work. Under these conditions, that fixed price model becomes increasingly attractive to anyone who would otherwise have considered building a PC. The picture that emerges from all of this when you put the Gartner data, the TrendForce analysis, the GPU shortages, the VRAM bundling changes, and the Nvidia production cuts together, it's not a temporary disruption that will self-correct in a year. It is a structural shift in the economics of the component market that is going to make the hobby genuinely more expensive, less accessible, and more consolidated around the top end of the spending curve. The era of the budget PC build may genuinely be coming to an end, and artificial intelligence is the force that is ending it. Don't forget that you can use my links below to grab some brilliant games at seriously discounted prices right now. Use my links below to get 31% off the critically acclaimed Resident Evil Requiem, a mental 91% off the amazing Streets of Rage 4, and even huge discounts on pre-orders such as 33% off Fatal Frame 2 Remake, which comes out this week, 28% off Monster Hunter Stories 3, which also comes out this week, and up to 90% off of thousands more games. Every single purchase through my links helps support this channel directly. And if you really love what I do here, you can get access to my behind the scenes Patreon cosplay library and a whole lot more. For example, I've also started posting outfits of the episode photos in my all-new style gallery. Today, for example, I have accessorized this stylish pink wig for the very first time. I love speaking gaming with you lots, and I'll see you all again very soon.